Hello, I'm Beth Joey and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, welcome. This is the channel where I paint my face, turn my camera on and talk about some books. I am just really bad at keeping on top of these 5-book reading updates, so I need to find a different method to give you guys updates on the books that I've been reading because this is not working. But if you guys enjoy this stuff, do let me know in the comments down below and I will try to keep doing it, but I'm finding at certain points in the month I will film like 3 5-book reading updates and then be like, well, that's the next like 6 weeks done, and then I'll do another splurge on them, and they're just, you know, it's not sustainable at all. Anyway, in this video I want to do another 5-book reading update with you guys where I run through some of the books that I read at the end of June because that is where we're at in terms of updates at the moment. And we are starting with The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. If you've watched my recent videos, then you know how much I love this book, and do check out my mid-year freakout tag where I talked about it in much more detail, as well as probably my June reading update, which I'll link both of them up above and down below for you to go and check out. But yeah, this is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. It is based around a girl by the name of Addie LaRue who makes a deal with the devil about 300 years in the past to live forever in order to escape a marriage that she doesn't want to be a part of. But unfortunately, the hidden caveat in that deal is that she now is going to be forgotten by every single person she ever meets. So she lives about 300 years of her life just trying to make a stamp on the world, really struggling and persevering to push through, and it's a really beautiful story until she meets a man by the name of Henry who she tries to steal a book from, and then when she goes back to try and return the book that she just stole, he goes, "Hey, I know you stole that," and he remembers who she was. So that sets us off a chain of events where they figure out why he's so different. The first thing I wrote down when I finished this book was just, damn Addie, you go girl, because it has the most beautiful ending in terms of coming full circle and giving the main character this feeling of power that she didn't have at the beginning of the book. It gives her this moment where you go, you may not have won yet, but you are on the road to it and we are here for it. This book genuinely hit different and it broke my heart. And if you know me, you know that I am not a character-led sort of book kind of girl. I really love a plot-based book or a lot of development in the plot side of things, and I care less about characters, but I think this book changed me. I grew such an intense emotional connection to Addie LaRue and to Henry so that I genuinely got goosebumps. I cried, everything towards the end of the book when certain things happened, and that has just never happened to me before. I am not a character-driven person. I think all in all, this book is perfect for anyone who's worried about the mark that they're going to leave on the world one day, because the whole premise of this book, I think, is around that mark you're going to leave and how you can unintentionally make an imprint on a person and plant an idea in someone's head. And that's what Addie has been doing all of her life. She's been planting ideas in terms of artwork and music and beauty inside of people's heads, and that is how her story has persevered. That is how she's been able to live forever, and that is how eventually she's sort of able to have that victory over the guy that she made a deal with. There's just beautiful symmetry throughout this book. It is told in a really beautiful, wonderful, amazing, incredible, all those things that Lady Gaga said in that video kind of way. It is unforgettable, and it was well deserved in terms of my best book in the first half of the year. If it wasn't already obvious, I gave it 5 stars. The second book that I want to cover in this video is The Box in the Woods by Maureen Johnson, which I read as part of Whateverthon, and I don't actually have this book on me because I've returned it to the library. The Box in the Woods is part of the Truly Devious series, but is separate to the first 3 books, which covered one mystery, whereas this one goes off on a completely new train and goes with sort of what happened as a result of the solving of that first mystery in the first 3 books and how that impacted Stevie and her friends' lives going forward. But for a bit of basis on what the Truly Devious series is about, it follows Stevie Bell, who is attending the Ellingham Academy, which is an illustrious school for particularly gifted students, which is sort of founded on the basis of loving games. And the founder of the school, Robert Ellingham, was entrapped in potentially the most dangerous game of all when his wife and his daughter went missing, and he had to try and figure out how to get them back. So this particular case was an infamous case in Stevie's world. It is an unsolved cold case, and so Stevie attends the Ellingham Academy with the goal of solving that case, finally bringing it to a close, and that's sort of what the whole book sort of bases around, until one day when all of Stevie's classmates, or a lot of Stevie's classmates, start to go missing and wind up dead as well. So she's enthralled in not only a case in the past, but one happening in her present timeline as well. So that's what the first 3 books kind of covers, whereas this book covers a separate case. Anyway, it's a very complicated sort of summary of what this book is about, but anyway, I gave it 4 stars. I was really glad that the series was continuing past the Ellingham Academy case because I love Stevie and her friends and the teen angst and the drama and the fun, and I think it is just such a light, easy, breezy book to read with some really obviously gruesome sort of underlying plot points but honestly, it's balanced really well, that they're separated really well so that you have those gruesome points, but then something really light and teenagery happens and you just laugh at the teen angst. Plus, I love the way that Stevie like channels Hercule Poirot, whose name I suck at pronouncing, the Agatha Christie the guy that Agatha Christie bases a lot of her novels around, in the way that she retells the events of the case at the very end when she's like doing the big reveal of how she got to her conclusion. I love that she channels Agatha Christie, and it's sort of like a renewal of that Agatha Christie, which is just known and loved in the mystery genre. This book though was very different to the first 3 in that the mystery was sort of solely encompassed in this one book. So rather than split in and out across 3, the mystery was started and solved by the end of this book, or started and came to a conclusion by the end of this book rather than solved necessarily. But I think that meant at times it felt quite rushed because I was used to really everything being drawn out and really spending a lot of time with the characters and the relationships and all of that sort of thing, and really enjoying that time with the characters and that teen angst that we got, whereas it was a lot more mystery based in this particular book. There was a lot less time with the characters because they were already well established in the first 3 books, but unfortunately I think the balance there then became slightly off because you got less time having that teen angst moments and way more time on the mystery and the gruesomeness and all that sort of thing. So that's why this book only got 4 stars from me, but I still really loved it. I thought it was amazing. I thought it was high stakes and tense when it needed to be, and yeah, it was just an all-round good read. Next up, I read Solitaire by Alice Oseman, which if you know Alice Oseman and some of her works, this book is a novel that sort of centers in the Charlie and Nick Heartstopper universe, except it follows Tori Spring, which is Charlie's older sister. Tori, I think, is in her second last year of high school. She's in 6th form now, and she's beginning to feel really sort of left out and misunderstood and not feeling like she's found her place in her friendship group. She's finding a lot of differences between them, and then one day a guy by the name of Michael Holden joins the school and kind of throws her world upside down, as well as a blog called Solitaire, which seems to be kind of focused around her, and it's causing the students in her school to erupt into just madness and mayhem. It is an amazing book. I love it. I love that there's more time in the Heartstopper universe, and I think this book gave me a really different perspective on the Heartstopper universe as well, because obviously in Heartstopper you're enthralled and you're completely set in that relationship and you're completely like wound up in it and absorbed in it, but then this gives that sort of external perspective, and it gives you another perspective on Nick and Charlie and their relationship and some of the stuff around it. And if I'm honest, it made me dislike Nick a little bit at times, but that's obviously because, you know, Tori is on Charlie's side. Tori's Charlie's sister, so she'll give the honest truth on certain events, whereas Charlie will kind of give the rose-colored glasses version sometimes when it comes to Nick. The ending of this book was incredibly intense, but before we get to that part, Solitaire was both very similar to other Alice Oseman books and very different. I think it was similar in that it has that really intense focus on mental health, which is great to see. Mental health rep is really clear, as well as just representation for a range of different sexualities. However, I think in this book it was more plot driven than a lot of the other Alice Oseman books, whereas some of the other ones are just like an examination of characters and their lives, and it's a moment in time and you're really just following those characters and that development of them as they change and grow through the various different like difficulties and things that they face. Whereas this one, it had a central plot of finding out who Solitaire was, as well as that sort of additional character development that happens on the side. Though I will admit that the identity of Solitaire, for me at least, was very obvious from the very beginning, and that's why this book only got 4 stars. It didn't have that mystery element that I wanted it to have because it was kind of predictable, which I know all the keyboard warriors are going to come at me for saying because everybody loves Alice Oseman, but I have to give my honest thoughts. Michael, in my opinion, was a very conflicting character for me. I couldn't decide if I loved or I hated him by the end of the book, because he obviously has a lot going on behind the scenes that sort of explains a lot of his actions and his behavior, but there are some things that he does that I still don't think are justified, and I still don't appreciate the way he treated some of the main characters. So unfortunately that kind of changed my perspective on him a little bit. And then of course I loved getting to know Tori more and learning more about her after the very sort of small amounts of her that we saw in Heartstopper as that protective older sister. It was nice to see her own life and her own struggles and her own things that she's going through and her own personality, so I loved getting more from her in this book, and I did really enjoy this book, but it did get 4 stars. And the last 2 books that I read were Girls of Paper and Fire and Girls of Storm and Shadow, which were 2 books that I read as part of my 24-hour read-a-thon thing that I did, where I stayed awake for 24 hours straight and tried to read that entire time. I was mostly successful, and I will link that video up above and down below for you to check out. It is just, it's a descent into delirium, which I think is the best kind of video. But anyway, Girls of Paper and Fire is set in a world where every year 8 girls are chosen to go to the palace and serve as paper girls to the king. It is both an illustrious position that some people strive for, as well as the most demeaning, because it essentially means that these girls become concubines to the king. Unfortunately, one year Lay is chosen as the 9th girl because of her particularly enchanting golden eyes. So you follow Lay as she learns the skills and charms required of her to become a king's consort, as well as the trauma that her and the other girls face in this role, being forced into this relationship that they want no part in, until Lay does the unthinkable and she falls in love with one of the other girls. And it is a beautiful sapphic romance that sort of has a threaded rebel plotline underneath it, which is the basis, I think, of a lot of that sort of dystopian royal anarchy sort of situation happening in this book. And I did really enjoy this one. Girls of Paper and Fire, I gave 5 stars. I was absolutely obsessed. It was an emotional roller coaster, don't get me wrong, but it was incredible. I think the way that the book handled assault and trauma was really respectful and really well done, which I very much appreciated, because it showed that even if multiple women are facing the same kind of situation, the same sort of barriers that each other are facing, they can all react in incredibly different ways, and there's no right way to react to a traumatic situation. For example, some of them found themselves infatuated with the king and falling in love with him, whereas others obviously found themselves hating him. So it was really respectfully done, that it showed you those different side of things and how different women can react differently to abuse and to trauma. The segregation of the entire kingdom was absolutely heartbreaking to read, but I did enjoy the moments of hope that were planted throughout the book, where you can see those different castes sort of interacting with each other and finding love and relationships and everything with each other, and going, you know what, at the end of the day, we're not all that different. We're going to build something together and ignore this sort of this rule that says that we can't be friends because, you know, you're a paper and you're a steel and you're a whatever. I think the world and the politics and the characters and everything was so perfectly built and developed so that you never felt confused at any point in time, whilst also retaining a lot of very expansive content. And I think the romance between the 2 main characters was really well paced as well. But Natasha Ngan did terrify me at the very end, because she made me realize that she is not afraid to kill off some of your favorite characters, and that is exactly what she did. And then I read Girls of Storm and Shadow, which is a continuation of this series, and I gave this book 4 stars. Unfortunately, I did not like this as much, and that is mostly because the romance that I wanted to see between our 2 main characters just did not blossom, and it actually turned into something really toxic in my mind. Whilst I understood that all the different characters had experienced a range of different types of abuse throughout their lives, be it abuse from their parents, abuse from their parental figures, the trauma from being the king's consort, all those sorts of things, I don't think some of the actions that they took, that they blamed on that abuse, were justifiable and excusable. I think some of the things that were done was still horrific, and the characters that sort of were impacted by those decisions had every right to remain upset and traumatized by the actions that were taken by the people that they loved, rather than feeling like they couldn't be mad because this person has been through so much. But I think the rest of the book was really beautiful. Natasha Ngan continued to prove that she's not able to both wrench away your favorite characters, but also give you hidden depths to some of the characters that you hated in the first book, to make you feel really conflicted about them. This one was definitely more slower paced than the previous book, in that it focused around that typical second book in a trilogy sort of thing, where you've got to build the rebel movement, you've got to build the world a bit more, and you've got to build this new environment that is then going to take a major part in the 3rd book. So it was a lot more about strategy and alliances and military strategy and all that sorts of things, and unfortunately that's something I'm less interested in, so that did make it more difficult to read. And also I was, you know, delirious when I was reading it, so that made it difficult as well. But anyway, I gave this book 5 stars, really enjoyed it, but I am currently tentative on whether I want to continue with the series, because I don't know if I can if I can forgive some of the main characters and look at them the same way again and support them going forward. So those are 5 books that I have read recently, and that takes us to the end of June. So we've still got all of the books that I read in July and a couple more from the end of June to go through in future videos. So there will be a few more of these coming along, but as for right now, let me know if you've read any of these books, loved them, hated them, what you're reading at the moment. I love to chat to you guys in the comments down below, and I do my best to reply to every single comment. I really hope that you liked this video, and if you did, please do let me know down below by liking, subscribing, hitting that notification bell, all those things. It is a super easy way to help my channel grow, and I will see you lovely people in my next video. Bye!